this is an interesting story that comes to you from the Chicago Sun-Times. It says that this is a Tim Novak and Chris Fusco story. They're the investigative guys for the Sun-Times. Sure. It said more white students are walking the halls at Chicago's top 4 public high schools. You got Peyton, near North. It's Jones Prep, and I'm sorry, North Side, North Side College Prep, Jones, and Whitney Young. More white kids are walking the halls there, they say. 41% at Peyton, by the way, of freshmen admitted in the past 4 years have been white, compared to 29% back in 2009. At Jones Prep, it went from 29 to 38%. And it's the first year race was no longer used to determine the makeup in Chicago schools in 2010 because there had been a decision by a judge, Judge Kokoris, who basically set aside a ruling from 1980, a consent decree that had required Chicago public schools to be desegregated with no school being more than 35% white. And there's a group called PURE, Parents United for Responsible Education, that is upset about this. Julie Woestehoff is their executive director. Julie, thanks for being with us.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good. I don't understand what the problem is here. You still have around 40% in these schools, which mirrors the percentage of white kids in the city of Chicago.
Well, there are only 9% white kids that actually go to Chicago public schools. You got a whole lot of white kids that are going to parochial and private schools, and then when they get a chance to get a free, high-quality public education in high school on the north side in brand-new state-of-the-art buildings, they are able to test in and take a lot of those seats.
So, again, what I don't understand the problem. I mean, these are parents that are paying property taxes. These are citizens of the city of Chicago. Why should they not have a shot at those schools?
Well, whose schools are they in this city? Are we developing a school system that's provides gated communities for privileged white kids, or are we supposed to be providing a public education for every child?
Well, every child would include those white kids, I would assume, right?
I don't think they should be included in disproportionate numbers.
Disproportionate to what?
Why should there be more white kids in the public schools, in high school, in the selective enrollment schools, than there are in every other public school?
Well, they're testing in, right? I mean, why shouldn't there be?
Absolutely.
I guess.
And that's the problem.
Well, why shouldn't there be? Let's take your question and invert it. Why shouldn't there be?
Because the tests are skewed towards white kids. So the whole system is skewed towards privileged white kids, which is not what public education is supposed to be all about.
Well, shouldn't public education be about being available to anybody who wishes to participate?
Yeah, on an equal basis, sure.
So, Julie, it sounds to me what you're saying is your problem is, or your organization's problem is with the testing system, that because the tests are skewed.
That's definitely part of it. Of course, the testing is only a means to an end. The means is the test. The end is maintaining white privilege. But the test is the way to do that. And standardized tests are designed in a way that always skews in favor of privileged white people.
They're still not the majority of the kids in the schools, though.
They're coming into these selective enrollment, highly resourced, small class size, restricted enrollment schools, brand new buildings. Now we're going to get a new Obama prep in the same neighborhood, which will be for the same kids. And these schools are being disproportionately enrolled with white kids. There are selective enrollment high schools on the south side, but those schools have historically been under-resourced. They've been promised programs that they never get. They're not the popular programs. There are virtually no white students going to those schools. And there's a reason for that. It's not because people don't necessarily want to go on the south side. Maybe there are some people that don't. It's that these schools don't have what Walter Payton has. They don't have what Northside Prep has. They don't have the 70 AP classes and the many language programs that they have on the north side. So that's why the privileged white kids want to go to these schools and why they're able to get in. If you look at the story carefully, and this was news to me, the way the tier system is set up, which is actually replacing the racial component that was thrown out because of the end of the DSEG consent decree, this tiered program actually makes kids from the Gold Coast the competition for kids who live at 95th and Halstead. Kids whose families make $300,000 are testing and are in competition with kids whose families make about $40,000. And there's never been any doubt that the best predictor of your test score is your economic level.
But there's far more kids. I'm not going to dispute that, but there are far more kids that are coming from $40 and $50 and $60 and $80,000 a year households that are coming from $300,000 households in the Chicago public school system. And you can't argue that. I mean, it's a very small percentage of really well-heeled kids. Mm-hmm. And even if if we all agree on that, again, you're telling people that they can't go to a school based on the color of their skin.
I'm telling people that they shouldn't take up more than their fair share of those.
So what's a fair share, do you think?
If they're 9% of white kids in the system overall, then that seems to be about a fair share. If people are not willing to send their kids to their neighborhood school, to invest as parents and as community members in their local neighborhood school, then they shouldn't be able to jump in to these beautiful selective enrollment schools at the last minute because their kids happen to be able to score high.
Are you a parent in the CPS?
I have been.
Yeah. And where did your kids go?
Well, this was many, many years ago, back when there were not many selective enrollment high schools, and my white sons were able to get into Whitney Young High School, and they attended there.
So they shouldn't have been allowed to get in there. Then is what you're saying. You would prefer now. I mean, why did you think then it was okay and now it is not? Back
then, there were almost no selective enrollment choices. And as soon as the consent decree ended and race was no longer a factor, we saw an explosion of North Side selective enrollment high schools with beautiful campuses, brand new buildings, which have always consistently enrolled a far disproportionate number of white kids. So, why is that?
But again, I want to go back to the question. Why was it okay for you then and it's not okay now?
Options opened up.
But it's even worse then, right? Because then there were fewer slots.
Going into the North Side neighborhood?
Ms. Woestehoff, there were fewer slots back when your kids were going.
Yeah, there were. That's right.
And so you were taking you were taking more valuable slots, one would argue.
My kids had gone to school in Chicago Public Schools from day one. They weren't kids who went to private school and then jumped in to go to Whitney Young because they could score high.
But the kids who are doing that, would you say the kids who are going to Chicago Public Schools now, the kids who are going to, and we could stay on the north side, want to talk about Ogden or talk about some of the other LaSalle Language or any of the other schools in the Chicago Public School system that tend to feed into those that have white kids in them, that those kids, that's okay for them to go, but if a kid is jumping from Latin or Parker or the parochial system, they shouldn't be allowed in?
I think it's really, really unfair and racist for a school system to be designed so that so many disproportionate white kids get into the most favored, most resourced schools, and that they use test scores to do that. And I think that's a very unfair system, and I think that our whole approach to public education in Chicago is perverted. And that we really need to develop a system where everybody has access to a good school.
But if you're saying, how is it not inherently racist?
We're going down the wrong path. Why are we now opening up Obama College Prep, 2 blocks down from Walter Payton Prep? And it's going to have the same kind of demographics. Why
is it not racist to say that the white kids can't do this?
You can say that if you want. I think that's kind of
I'm just asking you a question. You just think it's absurd. The notion is absurd.
I don't believe that it's racist to call a disproportionate white enrollment of students.
Of 38% is disproportionate, 37%.
It is disproportionate when only 9% of the whole system is white.
But about 37% of the city, 38% of the city is white.
Well, I would welcome them to enroll their kids in preschool in any neighborhood school, and I would love to see that happen.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Julie Woestehoff, Executive Director of Parents United for Responsible Education.